Hey, welcome to Beyond the Cart. I am your host, Kyle Hamer, and today we have special guest, me. Now, we had our guest that we had scheduled, unfortunately, had something come up and couldn't make it. So I'm your person. We're going to have a great conversation today, talking about scaling smarter. And every e-commerce brand out there eventually encounters how do we scale profitably, strategically within what we're trying to accomplish, right? And so that is the topic of our conversation today. Early growth, right, can often come from a couple of simple activities, right? You find a product, you get product market fit, and you launch some ads and you validate, you're testing what's working, and that is ideal, right? So that's the beautiful thing with ads. So you can test pretty quickly in terms of what that looks like. But as the company grows and you start to build, you face a couple of things, right? You face like customer acquisition typically becomes more expensive. The more channels you add, it adds layers of complexity in what you're doing. More people are end up engaged with the customer journey as like your team grows. Maybe your marketing data becomes fragmented. Your technology platforms begin overlapping, and then now you're using AI quite a bit, right, to manage some of this stuff. So your team actually spends more time managing work and output, and maybe less time actually creating growth. I was just had a call earlier today with somebody, and one of my favorite quotes was a book, and I can't remember the author's name. I need to probably go look it up again. But essentially, it was a book, and the quote is, "Big doors swing on little hinges," and it is a great analogy when you think about strategy, because ultimately you are given so many things to do, especially even with AI now, because AI is going to give you about 300 pages of strategy and maybe some level of like prioritization of that strategy, but typically it's a little bit pulled away from your overall goals. It's a little bit hallucination. It's a little bit hallucinated, basically, right? Within that, when you talk about strategy. So now you're faced with like, well, what should I be focused on? And that's where the idea between these little hinges are, right? You have their big leverage points within your business, and that is one of the things I want to talk about today. So as you scale, businesses need better growth systems. And we're going to break down, I'm going to try and cover three. We'll see how much time we have as we go through them. Now, since I'm going solo, it's easy for me to get long-winded. But first, let's talk about strategic partnerships and how they can be a real growth engine. Now, the great thing about strategic partnerships are they can impact on the e-com side. They are great on the B2B side. All of them sort of can play within this framework, right, of strategic partnerships. So first, I'm going to talk about strategic partnerships. Second, I want to talk about reducing customer friction, so you get more out of the same amount of traffic. And then third, if we have time, I'll love to talk about AI and how AI is impacting marketing teams, helping them increase reach and efficiency without adding layers of complexity, right? That might be its own next standalone episode as we talk about AI, but we'll see how much time we have. But these three concepts can definitely be connected, right? When you think about overall strategy, because right partnerships can create access, better customer experience helps convert that access into revenue, and smarter systems, especially around AI, will help you scale while keeping your margins intact, which is really ultimately what's going to matter, especially if you're in a physical product business, in e-com, D2C, consumer packaged goods, CPG. Margin is extremely important because you need to have good margins in order to fuel your growth, unless you're bringing in outside capital, right? If you're bringing in outside capital, then great, you can rock and roll with it. But if not, then you're trying to self-fund it, then margins absolutely are critical. All right, so let's talk about strategic partnerships as a growth engine. When most e-commerce companies think about growth, they usually think about it in terms of channels: Meta, Google, Amazon, SEO, AI, AEO, email, affiliates, influencers. The list goes on and on and on and on. And those are all absolutely legitimate growth channels. Like 100%, you do not want to ignore them. But one of the most overlooked growth channels is strategic partnerships. And a strategic partnership is a relationship, how I would define it, in which two separate organizations combine their audiences together. And they do almost, think of it almost like a joint venture, right? Where you have audiences, capabilities, distribution, or technology, maybe even expertise or resources that create value that neither company by themselves could create efficiently on their own. And that is my definition of a strategic partnership. So potentially one way, there's some cool things to think about when it comes to strategic partnerships, and there's different levels to it. So within the definition I just gave you, you can really quickly realize that not every cross promotion is a strategic partnership, because affiliates are gonna, if you can send one email about a company, that's a promotion. If you exchange some social posts, maybe that's a collaboration. A strategic partnership would go even deeper and really creates ideally ongoing business advantage. And that advantage might come from customer access. So maybe you have a shared customer base that you go deeper in that collaboration with, right? Or maybe it's actual referral agreement and it's built into your sales and your funnel process. A great example of this, not necessarily in the e-commerce space, but in the affiliate marketing space or in the digital online space, is what would be called the offer wall. And maybe you witnessed this if you ever went through a funnel online. You end up buying the product or you sign up for the free thing. Oftentimes it was a free lead magnet, right? That would be the primary driver that you opt in, or maybe it's a low ticket thing. You get to the thank you page. And on the thank you page, it's a whole list of other offers that are just there. And then in that world, they called that the offer wall. That could be, again, that's a little bit more of a collaboration. It's not so much a collaboration component as that's promotion and affiliate marketing, but you could upscale that and actually integrate that more deeply into your overall sales funnel if you had a strategic partner that could do an affiliate partnership with you that maybe could go beyond just you promoting their product here and there, right? So there's ways and levels you can think about that. And so customer access, direct customer access, product bundling. Maybe my product goes great with your product and we collaborate together and do a co-promotion and really kind of tie that in. So think about it from that standpoint: customer access, product bundling, maybe distribution channels, technology integration, shared content, co-marketing. Licensing is another great strategic partnership that you can build into as well. So why partnerships matter? So customer acquisition is definitely, I heard somebody say this and I 100% agree with this. Your cost to acquire a customer is the cheapest it's going to be right at this moment. And if you've been in the game long enough, you can remember when your customer acquisition cost was way cheaper than it is right now. But the sad reality is that your customer acquisition cost as it stands right now is likely going to be the cheapest, unless you're highly under optimized, which could be a reality. This is the cost it is to acquire a customer. So because of that, it's becoming more difficult. I think almost every company is competing. And the reason why this is the case is because every company is competing inside the same advertising platforms for the most part. There are some outliers that have less competition, and we can talk about that definitely on another episode. If you guys are interested, hit up the comments. If you're interested in chatting about where there's underutilized channels within advertising. But for the most part, I think that the stat was something like 68%. 68%, I don't remember off the top of my head, of say e-com brands generally use Meta as their primary platform. And that means that there's a lot of competition on Meta, Facebook, and Instagram for that. So if everyone's competing for the same ad space, the same um, book of business, right? The same catalog of ad availability, then it's going to go up, right? You're going to pay more. So, and what you also see too, and the other driver of this is, say a brand launches on Meta, launches on Google, and then their competitor sees stuff starting to work, and you end up seeing the competitor on Meta running the same style of ads, or you see them on Google, right? So you're in a space where you're always sort of playing, either you're leading and you have people catching up, or you're trying to catch up and you're trying to take market share, and you're kind of following and trying to take that from the market leader, right? So there's always that level of competition that exists. So basically, you're competing more for the same attention, therefore it costs more. Partnerships allow you to access the trust that's already been built. So instead of trying to introduce the company to completely cold audiences, it's a warm referral, and that has a lot more weight than you just going cold and running ads top of funnel, because that reduces the distance between awareness and conversion. And the fastest way to improve your customer acquisition costs is to reduce the distance between awareness and conversion. And that, to a cold audience, is challenging and difficult to do. But starting at a warmer spot, and with within a warm referral, if you have a strategic partnership, unlocks that conversion rate at a much higher level, and also the time it takes in which to convert that. And the important word is trust there. Like, they need to trust that other partner, or that strategic partner that you would be working with. And so, and the other thing to think about is that a partnership, when you're evaluating it, is not so much that it's simply because that company has a large audience. It's valuable when that audience trusts that partner, and it has a logical reason to care about your offer. So I would say audience size alone isn't enough, but if you have a highly aligned customer base that generates more value than a larger partner, then that would be a much better outcome. And there's quite a few examples of this, even in the e-com space, where you had brands that were launching, and what they did was they strategically used their cap table to work with content creators and influencers within their niche. And so instead of thinking of them like an affiliate as a transactional approach, they actually said, hey, we actually want to partner with you and launch this brand and bring you in as an actual equitable partner in this business for the long term. And so instead of you just getting, a affiliate commission on the sales you drive, you're actually going to participate in the equity growth of this brand as well, because you're helping drive that growth. And it's worked really, really well. And there's a lot of examples within the space. Dude, I don't want to misquote this, but I think it was like Black Rifle Coffee was a great example of this, right? Where they actually went and found one of their co-founders who already had a big audience on YouTube. If this is incorrect, someone can correct me in the comments, or this is out of the fact, but I'm pretty sure that this was like the scenario where they found one of their co-founders who already had a pretty decent sized audience on YouTube for their ideal customer profile, right? Their ICP. And they just brought him into the business. And either it was early on in the business, they brought him in after the fact, but he was pretty much around that co-founder level. But that's helped unlock that growth channel. All right. So with that said, hopefully you're convinced that strategic partnerships are something to consider. Let's break down maybe 4 ways you would evaluate a strategic partner. And the first one is going to be customer alignment. So do the two companies serve the same customer, or customers that are closely related? The products shouldn't necessarily be identical. In fact, it's best if they're complementary, right? Rather than competing products, because you're probably not going to sign a strategic partner that has an exact competing product with you, because you're a competitor, not necessarily a partner. And so that's the mindset. So think about it like this. So a pet health company might partner with a veterinary network, or pet insurance, right? So pet insurance is definitely a niche. It's not as big in the US, but it's really big in Europe, because in some cases, in some European countries, they actually require you to license your pet to actually have pet insurance as well. So it's part of their law and the culture. here's an example that comes from my background. So an art supply company might partner with an online art educator, right? Now, oftentimes that does fall into like the content creator, artist online. It's more transactional, but we've definitely done partnerships before. One time we did a similar sort of partnership, and I wouldn't necessarily call it a strategic partnership because it wasn't a long-term thing. So it doesn't quite fit my definition. But as an example, with our art supply brand, we actually reached out and worked with a art nonprofit. And what we did, which is super interesting, was we actually said, hey, we would love it if you would promote our products, to your email list. And what we'll do is we'll just basically, for the 3-day period that we are working to that we're going to run your promotion, we're going to donate all of our profit for those 3-day period to your nonprofit organization to support artists, right? So you go push it hard to your email, your social media, and we're going to push it as well. But whatever profit we make for those 3 days, we're donating to you. And that was kind of our promotional strategy. So it doesn't really fit, but you could tie in strategic partnerships in the long haul around that idea, right? Where if you had an online art educator or somebody who was a nonprofit and you wanted to do a long-term strategic partnership with them, you could do something along that. Just do it more than a couple times. So if you're in a garden niche, right, maybe you are going to partner with a wildlife organization or landscape designers, and there's a lot of different ways that you're going to think about it, right? And the real question is, it's not so much do we sell the same thing. The question is, does the customer have a logical reason to buy from both of you? Like, I think that's the question that I would be leaning into. Number 2, complementary capabilities. So a strong partner should bring something you do not already have to the table. This could be audience access, maybe fulfillment infrastructure, technology distribution, content expertise, sales capacity, or specialized knowledge. I mean, there could be a lot of different ways that gets connected. But then a relation becomes more valuable to you when each side fills a gap for each other. Like, those are the best kinds. And so an example might be one company has an excellent product, but maybe they have a limited distribution, and the other might have a lot of distribution, but they need to supplement their product offering. They need a complementary product. So that would be one example of a strategic partner. One might have technical expertise, and the other might have the customer relationships. Again, one might have a great content engine. There might be an influencer that you want to bring on to your cap table eventually, right? If they were a good fit, or the list can go on and on. But complementary capabilities would be ideal. 3, mutual economic value. So what does this mean? A partner can't remain dependent on just goodwill. There has to be mutual economic value for both parties, right? So the companies need clear reason to continue investing in the relationship, whether that's direct revenue, leads, customer retention, lower customer acquisition costs. The list can go on and on. Now, your economics don't necessarily have to be identical. Both of them don't need to drive revenue, right? But they must be understandable and measurable and have meaning to both of those companies. So when the value is vague, the partnership tends to lose momentum, right? And they just kind of fall off to the wayside. You kind of see that happening in the affiliate space or in the content creator space as well. When there's not really strong management and there's really not clear value add occurring, you typically lose momentum with that. Number 4, operational compatibility. So this is the factor where companies, then this is the one that oftentimes people overlook when they think about strategic partners, because a partnership might look good on paper, but really fail when you actually apply it. Like, it looks great, presentation, the PowerPoint's beautiful, but the actual execution is lacking. And so that's where you need to kind of be paying attention to whether or not that these companies, can they make decisions at the similar pace as you, right? So if you're looking to work with a partner, but they operate at a slower pace than what you operationally execute at, or if they operate at a much faster pace than what you execute at, that mismatch is going to be frustrating. So make sure you have compatibility in terms of your pacing, because that'll matter. How well do they communicate, right? Is important. Can their systems exchange the necessary information with you? Can you share that level of tracking that's going to be important to track through? And there's a whole bunch of other things you could list, like who owns customer experience, who handles support, who approves campaign. Like when you think about strategic partnerships, somebody has to take ownership operationally of how that gets executed, right? So when all those aligned, when you have strategic alignment, but you are missing any of these key elements, do you become, the operating models become incompatible, and things fall apart. All right. So speaking of falling apart, let's dive in a little bit more into the how these strategic partnerships can kind of break down. So one, and I just mentioned it a second ago, was there's a lack of ownership, right? So both companies agree that the partnership is exciting, but unfortunately nobody owns it. And this can even happen in your teams, right? So you might have a team that's executing on stuff, but nobody actually owns the particular outcome. Then you have meetings and you have ideas, but nothing gets shipped, nothing gets launched because nobody has the actual ownership of that particular thing. That happens quite a bit too, right? But it happens in partnerships as well. So you have to be mindful of lack of ownership. Number two is unclear value. So one company expects leads, the other company expects brand awareness, but neither side defines what that KPI actually means. It's not trackable. It's not measurable. That is going to be a problem because you're not going to be able to clearly assign whether or not it's working and not make decisions off of it. So unclear value be one of the second reasons. The third is just an imbalance, right? Where one company does most of the work while the other contributes very little. And that creates a frustration that eventually will end the relationship. The fourth one and last one on this list is, and this one has a tendency to occur to us if we're not careful across the board as well. And that's excessive complexity. So companies that attempt to launch really large, sophisticated initiatives before they've kind of proved that their customers are interested tend to have some problems with it. It's much better to start small, do a measurable test, and then scale, right, beyond that. And maybe that would look like content collaboration, right, or referral arrangement as an easy way to kind of get started, to kind of the first step into a strategic partnership. Maybe it's a product bundle or even a landing page that's specific. Like it's not uncommon to build out landing pages in e-commerce for certain influencers, right, or certain content creators that you want to really work with, and you'll give them their own dedicated landing page for them to send their referrals and their people and their audience to. That's pretty common. Or maybe it's an email campaign, but you run the smallest version of your potential strategic partnership that can produce useful information for you, and then evaluate that response. Did your customers engage? Did their customers engage? Did qualified leads emerge? Did you improve acquisition costs? Whatever the metric is you want to track to. And then you can talk about what might be an expanded version of that partnership looking like, right? And you can define the metrics around it however makes sense for your business. It can be leads, it can be revenue, it can be customer acquisition costs, it can be conversion rate, average order value, new to brand. You can come up with a bunch of them, right? The one that I would pay attention to and make sure that you include in any sort of strategic partnership or any type, even affiliate, whatever it is you're doing where you're working with somebody else, is the KPI that you must track, hands down, is the time required to manage the relationship. I think that's often the most overlooked KPI especially when you're kind of working at a partnership level, is what is the time required to manage that relationship. That metric, I think, matters the most. And because if you don't account for that and you start spending more and more and more of your time, eventually you're going to have diminishing returns. And if you're not clear on that at the beginning, it's going to come back and probably bite you. So be aware of that. Any partnership that produces a revenue but consumes an unreasonable amount of time is not scalable, and it's probably not going to be worth it from an ROI perspective once you break that down. All right, so what are some practical takeaways from this, right? Here's what I would think about. I would create a list of 10 organizations. You've heard of the idea of the Dream 100. Basically, it's like, what are the Dream 100 clients or customers that I would want to have, right? And this is your Dream 10 for potential organizations that adjacently already serve your customers that do not directly compete with you. I would write down 10. I'd write each one, write it down. I would say I would try to identify what audience and capability they have, what you could offer them, what they could offer you, what would that small initial test might look like, and how both companies would measure success, right? I would not approach it from, well, what can this partner do for me, right? Or do for my company? I would start like, what can we together create that is beneficial to all of our customers, right? That is the secret sauce. It's like always lead with like, what's the value of that customer? Like, how do we put our customers first? I mean, obviously that's Amazon's customer centric. We're the most customer centric company in the world. That's their slogan, and that's what they live by. But that's also how you want to build your foundations around from a partnership standpoint. That's what I would do. 10. You don't have to do 100. It's not quite the Dream 100 list, but if you identify 10 organizations that you'd want to partner with, then go through that again. Quick recap. Who's their audience? What capability do they have? What could you offer them? How can they benefit you? What's the small initial test and what might that look like? And how would both companies be able to measure success? Write it down, put it together, reach out to them. DMs, email, just get in touch with the decision maker, LinkedIn, and rock and roll, right? So that is strategic partnerships in a nutshell. It's often underlooked. It can be a powerful growth lever if you use it properly. And it's definitely something that you're going to want to spend time, because the ROI can be pretty massive if you can unlock it. It's not as easy as flipping on an ad, right? Or hiring an agency to do it, because it takes really your executive team, your founder, your co-founder, your time as a leader to really put the thought into it and to really manage that relationship. But it is definitely powerful if you do. All right, so let's talk about quickly. We got a little bit more time, so we'll run into it, where we're going to talk about customer friction and reducing that, right? And when we reduce customer friction to increase conversion, this is another part of growth. Unlocking growth, being systematic within our growth process. So to scale smarter, we talked about the first one. Strategic partnerships, absolutely underutilized strategy to unlock new customers. The second piece of that in scaling smarter is, in my opinion, increasing the conversion rate on your store or on your landing pages, because the power of that, we go back to the big doors swing on little hinges. Conversion rate is definitely a little hinge, and the power of it is that just small step increases in conversion rate will drive pretty massive sales increases, right? Because you don't have to increase your traffic, right? You don't have to increase any more people that you're getting to your website right now, getting to your landing page right this second. You're just increasing the performance of that traffic. You're getting better traffic, or you're aligning the message and the offer to your customer more efficiently, which improves that conversion rate. So you can spend a ton of money on ads and still struggle to grow, and still struggle to be profitable, right? And especially if you sell on a platform like Amazon, right? That you can spend a ton of money on Amazon ads, but still be losing money overall on the platform. So customer friction is anything, I would define it. Customer friction is anything that makes it harder for a buyer to understand, trust, purchase, receive, use, or repurchase your product. That is my definition of customer friction. There may be a better one out there. This is pretty expansive when you think about friction. You have to understand the product. You have to trust the brand. You have to actually execute the transaction. You have to get the product that you paid for, especially if it's a physical product that's to be shipped. what you promise that product is going to do needs to actually live up to your promise when they use it. And then you want to make it easy for them to repurchase that product, ideally, so that you have building lifetime value, right? And so that most of the time people think about friction as their checkout process or their cart process. There's definitely some of that can exist. Oftentimes with Shopify, if you are on so Shopify is like Shopify Plus, which is like their premium product that allows you to customize checkout. If you're not on that, then you're on the lower plans of Shopify for ecom. You don't have a ton of opportunity to move their checkout around, right? But they've optimized their checkout to be pretty effective, right? Now, friction also can occur in the discovery, in the product evaluation part of the funnel, navigation, the actual getting the cart process, and all those other areas that I kind of already outlined. You can have friction in your customer support. One area that I've seen where there's a big friction point for D2C brands or e-com brands that sell physical products is returns. Like, one of the reasons Amazon built so much rapport with its customer base was that it made their returns super easy to execute, which is also the bane of many of the sellers on Amazon's approach, because it's like so easy. They can just return and get their money back. But that level of just ease and trusting that they're going to be able to execute on that return policy builds a lot of brand loyalty. And so returns are a big piece of it, right? So again, product evaluation, discovery, navigation, your purchasing funnel, the fulfillment of your product, customer support, returns, and then the opportunity to reorder that product again. All of those are potential friction points. One way to think about it is every unanswered question creates potential friction. Every unnecessary step creates friction. Every inconsistency creates friction. And I would say I'm pretty much an expert at creating friction for people within stuff that I've built and tested before. Because then I've gone back and looked at it and like, oh, wow, that was really dumb. And the data actually proves that it's not just my opinion. Like, the actual data proved that it was a really stupid way to design something. So it's easy to do. So that allows you to think about all these opportunities. So you want to have a framework to think about all those friction points, right? Because it's easy to create them. And the biggest reason why it's easy to create them is because oftentimes when we're building something, we have this innate sense of familiarity with the product or the brand because it's ours. We spend our time and energy investing into it. We don't think about it, and we can't think about it as someone who has zero experience with that product or brand that's fresh, right? And that's why you have to get data, you have to get traffic, you have to get feedback from people that haven't spent the last 6 months building your brand and building your, like, it's super clear in your brain, but as soon as it hits real people, it kind of gets fuzzy. And that often happens too. It's like that proximity makes us a little bit less discerning about it, about a brand or about a product, about our offer than what we should be. So oftentimes businesses misdiagnose. They think they have a traffic problem, but in reality, they have a conversion problem. And this is a conversation I have with, onboarding and new clients all the time, is around this idea of they think it's like, oh, I need more traffic or I need better ads. But the reality is they have a broken funnel. The best way I can describe it is when you think about your entire sales process, you imagine that you are pushing a boulder, right? You're trying to get momentum. You're trying to get this big boulder moving, and it's heavy and it takes a lot of effort and energy. But now imagine that you're actually trying to push this thing up a hill. You're fighting gravity. It's harder than it should be. And that's what happened when you have a lot of unalignment and you have a lot of friction within your funnel. If you haven't really done product market fit yet, or you have glaring issues from a conversion and trust factors like on your site. So with that problem means you're pushing it, you're exerting more energy than what you should be to actually get momentum to move, right? And that's why your customer acquisition costs are much higher. Your goal is to kind of bring that alignment into place and basically turn that incline going up and trying to get it at least flat, right? So at least you're still having to put energy into pushing the boulder, but you can get a little bit of momentum to help you keep it going, right? Then as you continue to refine your process, it reverses. And now you're in sort of this decline state. And now gravity is sort of helping you. And now you get the flywheel effect as you push, but you're actually going faster and faster and faster as you're putting more energy, because now you're going with momentum. And that's ultimately the goal that you want to get to with any of your conversion optimization that you're working on. It's like, oh, I'm just building that momentum. I've identified who my customers clearly. I've made that offer. That offer the market likes. They want to spend money. They're willing to pay that money. They're willing to like buy from me again multiple times. And you just start building and building. So again, here's some real common sources of customer friction. We outlined a bunch of them, but here are sort of the major ones that I've seen. And that is unclear positioning. And as someone I would also say is I've been a master at making very muddy positioning statements for offers in the past. I can tell you undoubtedly this is one that I see and have done and committed clearly often. Unclear positioning. So customers should be able to quickly understand what the product is, who it's for, and why it's different. Another way to think about it is the USP around it, right? And that positioning statement matters a lot. A clever headline is not enough if the customer remains confused about it, basically, right? Like you can be clever in your marketing, but if your product and offer and customer is still confusing or still not understanding it, then you're just going to be left with friction, right? This is what I try to keep in mind when I think about this. Clarity usually outperforms creativity. So this is a writer downer if you're thinking about conversion rate stuff. Clarity usually outperforms creativity, especially when you're at the buying decision. So test that thesis, right? You can have the most creative things. That's why oftentimes the data is really kind of funny, but ugly ads historically outperform super beautiful creative ads, like just ugly ads, because they stand out and they're typically super clear in what they're trying to accomplish. And it's crazy. Like you can look at the data and like it's an ugly looking ad, but it actually wins when it comes to just a pure decision. Now, obviously, when you think about it, you have like branding considerations you have to make and all that kind of stuff that kind of gets factored into it. So it's like branding usually typically wins with it, but ugly ads, you should test them. They actually will probably surprise you how well they perform. So we got unclear positioning. Second, we have weak product information. I also see this as often a challenge for conversion. So customers need enough information to feel confident. So make sure you have all of your product dimensions, materials. Now you'll kind of see this a lot of times filled out within metadata, especially in the back end of Shopify, where you have all your ingredients, materials, use cases, care instructions, even shipping delivery expectations is a big one. I would think warranty information, return policies, product comparisons, any like demonstrations that you have of the product. All of those are product related information, right? And the more you have that's clear, you don't have to overdo it. I don't need 10,000 demonstrations of the product, like a product video on one landing page, but having some demonstration of it is handy. But having that right information for your product is great. And that's what it's going to give people the confidence to buy. Now, the other thing I would think about, it's important to know, simple, inexpensive products might require very little explanation. Technical, more expensive, customized, or new products to the market probably are going to require more. And that's just the nature of it. It's not an impulse buy. It requires more education. It's more of an investment of the customer's money. So therefore, you're going to need more surrounding it to support that, more likely than not. And the other thing to keep in mind is like sometimes it's easy. It's like I listed a bunch of things, but the goal isn't to make every product page super long. The goal is to answer the questions that are causing friction that's preventing the purchase. And once you have that dialed in, you should be good to go. All right, let's quickly nail a couple of more of these things, and we're going to call it a night. Third one, poor mobile experience. Most e-commerce traffic is mobile. Most websites are still designed and primarily reviewed on a desktop. So if you're not paying attention to the mobile experience, small problems become big problems on mobile, especially if that's where your traffic's coming from. So buttons are usually like difficult to tap. Pop-up screens cover, where you're trying to show people the product. The options are hard to select. The images load slowly on mobile, and details get buried, moved around, and you get too much typing and checkout. Mobile wins hands down. So optimize for mobile first. Google actually looks at mobile first when it analyzes your site. Doesn't look at your desktop page first. Looks at your mobile experience first when they analyze your website. So if that's Google's approach to your website, you should probably follow that same logic and do it as well. So think about mobile. The other thing that I think that often gets factored in terms of like a friction point is you have unexpected cost structures. What do I mean by that? For the customer, they land on it, they see the product, they like it, and then they're like, "Oh, you have to charge me $10 for shipping." That's not exciting. Or taxes or fees, or you have delivery restrictions, right? So, I mean, if you don't ship internationally and you only ship to the US, if you get international traffic to your site, they make it to your checkout, they're not going to be able to buy the product because of that. And that's a strategic choice, but it could be a definite cause of abandonment, right? So maybe one unlock is like, how do we unlock our international deliveries, and what does that look like? What do we have to charge for it? How does it impact margin? That could be one way you can improve your conversion rate, just to be able to unlock those things. Because customers might accept higher total cost when it's communicated clearly. And oftentimes too, in the e-commerce space, I'd even say often what ends up happening is you offer free shipping, but you just bake in your shipping cost into the actual price of the product, right? You just bake it into your margin. So the psychology is, oh, they're giving me free shipping. That's great. They don't really actually think about it as an increase in price because of it. So that's one way that you can kind of think about shipping. As well. But you want to set expectations early. So you want to be able to communicate that early on the homepage. What qualifies, do you offer free shipping? What qualifies for it? Restate that on the product page. Make sure it's on your cart. Like, have those things clearly identified. One other thing too, that you would think this would be counterintuitive, but it's actually not. And that is, you offer too many choices. Because there's an adage, the confused customer, the confused mind never buys. And so choices can be helpful, but if you offer too many choices, it kind of creates, paralysis by analysis, and you can't make a decision around it. So if customers can't quickly understand the difference between the products, then they'll delay in purchasing, or they won't make a decision. And that can be a problem. So how do you combat that? Use comparison charts, especially if they're your own products. Use your bestseller labels, like, oh, this is our bestseller category. So people are like, oh, this is bestseller. I want to go check this out first. You can use sort of quizzes or guided selling tools so you can help people find the right product. An enhanced search experience on your website can really be a good way for you to find if you have a lot of products to choose from, you have a big catalog, really leaning into search and what that produces for the customer would be great. Bundles, again, are great. Or if you can just even offer clear recommendations of like, this particular customer or this customer profile, we know who they are. This is the product that we recommend for them. Just say that straight up. You do not want to force your customer into becoming an expert in your catalog before they buy your product. That's going to be a pretty big mistake. A couple more, and then we're done. Lack of trust. So you don't have enough trust factors on your website. So I discussed, is the company legitimate? Do they have clear shipping policy? When will I expect my product to arrive? Do I have reviews? Do I have, UGC of people talking about the product? What happens? What's the return policy? Is it super clear and easy for me to understand? Do they have all the payment, Visa, MasterCard, secure things in there? And are their claims credible, right? So lack of trust. Trust is definitely an important piece of that. So you get those through the reviews, the guarantees, being transparent with your policies, Certifications, if it's applicable to your product or to the offer that you make sure you have credible certifications. Recognizable payment options. Add customer reviews with photos is great. All those fun things would add to it. Disconnected communication is another failure point of friction, where so like your ads promise one thing, your landing page says something slightly different, and the product page emphasizes something completely different than that. Your email follow-up uses even different language than that, and the customer experience is this inconsistency. One thing that we've, like I've said before, and the term that's used in advertising is ad scent. It's like, does the ad and the landing page still look like they belong together? Right? Ad scent. But trust is a big deal, right? So you got to close that for sure. You want to be coherent. The other thing, internal complexity can often become a customer friction point. So many customer experience problems originate actually inside your organization and the systems that you have that are running the business. So marketing launches a promotion, but customer service is not even aware about it, right? So they don't even know that there's a deal going on. And so people are asking the customer service people, hey, tell us about this deal. I'm like, we don't know what you're talking about, right? So sales might promise a delivery timeline. Your operations can't actually meet it, right? Again, that internal complexity can definitely become a friction point for customers, which can definitely drive your friction. So wrapping this up, growth, go look at strategic partnerships as a growth, look at conversion rate and reducing friction points. How I'd prioritize the reduction. I would look at number one, customer impact first. What points of friction are impacting the customer experience? Then number two, revenue impact. How close is this problem to the actual purchasing decision, right? So I would use that as a metric in which to judge what to start working on. And the third one is confidence. Like how strong is the evidence that this is the real issue that is a factor in our conversion rate being lower than what we would like? And then the fourth factor in terms of prioritizing all of these different things we laid out is how difficult it will be for us to fix it. Is this a simple problem that we can solve relatively quickly? And if it's a simple problem affecting a large percentage of our checkout users, then we should prioritize that over, say, like a major redesign based on someone from marketing that had a great idea, right? Nothing against marketers. We love you. I'm one. You're probably one watching this as well. You have I want to redesign the website. Love it. But if it's a little fix that we can actually make to the user experience that will impact sales, we should do that first and use evidence to do so. So yeah, I mean, hopefully this is of value today. I think we could definitely, I could go on this for quite a bit longer, but we've already been running for 48 minutes. So hopefully you got some value. Go back through, watch this, take away. If you've enjoyed this content, please give us a like and a love and a 5-star review on whatever platform you're watching this on. If you're not watching this live on YouTube or LinkedIn, if you're listening to it on the podcast, we would appreciate that as well. And again, if you need anything from me, if you want to dive more into conversations about conversion rate, or even talk directly about strategy, could be even around strategic partnerships, feel free to hit me up on LinkedIn. I'm happy to connect and jump on a call with you at any time. And I look forward to hearing about your implementation of these concepts in your business. Please shout us out and let us know if you've tested this stuff out and saw some good outcomes. So with that, I want to wish everyone a fantastic Tuesday night or whenever you're hearing this, and see you guys all next time.